There's a second. Hello everybody, my name's Chris and welcome to Retro Ratchet. So if you're interested in finding out what it's actually been like owning and running a B204 converted Astra Coupe, then stay tuned. What's broken? What have I had to replace? What have I liked? What have I disliked? We're going to take it for a drive for those of you who haven't seen any of these videos before, and then we're going to do a walk around and see what condition it's in. Right, so let's get into it. So for those of you who are new to the channel or who haven't seen any videos in B204, I'm going to give you a wee bit more information about it. I bought the car in January 2023. It had already been converted to B204 Saab power. So again, for those of you not familiar, that's a 2 litre, 16 valve. You got these in Saab 9000s, 900s and some early 93s. And I think this one came out of a 93. So it's been fitted into the Mk4 Coupe. It's an Edition 100. This was a Vauxhall 100 year anniversary model, and they're all numbered, and this one's number 341. They painted them all pearlescent centenary blue, and they came with this cashmere coloured leather interior. I bought the car MOT'd, I bought it running. It had been built, I think, in Yorkshire somewhere. It had been brought up to Scotland, and I bought it up in Scotland with the strict intention of using it as just a fast road car, so a bit of fun at the weekends, and also getting into a bit more track evenings up at Knockhill. So let's get on to the bit that everybody's going to be most interested in, is performance. How well does it go? How quick is it? So you've seen the track day videos. It done all right on the track. We're just going to give it a wee blast up some country roads at the moment, within national speed limit of course. So I've got an extra camera on the clocks, so I've got a good view of them as well, which is handy. Engine's nicely warmed up, which is a good start. So with it only being the T25, one of the positives is it does spool pretty fast. Obviously it doesn't have as big a kick as a TD04, but remember, a Mk4 Astra is still quite a light car, and it does sound pretty cool. So it's definitely a lot of fun. But this is where it's most at home on these type of roads. And I think this kind of power level, I mean, it's estimated about 250, 260 brake, is a reasonably sweet spot. It's a usable amount of power on the roads. There's a second. So I'm pretty pleased with it. A few engine modifications. It's got the Volvo valve springs which allow it to rev higher, although I don't actually have the rev limit raised on it. It's got the standard T25 turbo which has been fully rebuilt. It's got a 3-inch handmade downpipe along with the sports cat, and the rest of the system I think is about 2.5 inch. It has an upgraded intercooler. I think there's 2.5 inch pipes on those as well. Balance shaft delete on it as well. And that's all the engine modifications. In terms of transmission, it's running a diesel gearbox. It's got a 6-paddle clutch. It's had the slave cylinder replaced, Vigan pressure plate, and it's had a skimmed flywheel. Suspension, so we're running Bilstein B14s. We've got a white line rear anti-roll bar on it, and we've got Mark V VXR front brake setup. Okay, so first and foremost, I think the question on everybody's lips is what's broken? You would expect quite a high failure rate on a car that's had a completely different engine and gearbox transplanted in, along with turbo, injection system, all of that kind of things. But I'm actually pretty pleased to say that there's actually been very little that has actually failed during my ownership. So we had the head gasket failure along with the solid water pipe that ran along the front of the engine. So with the water pipe, it was a bit of corrosion, it seemed, that had set in on one of the welds, and that was actually leaking from below, and I had missed that. So that was a really tricky one to track down, this constant, very, very slight loss of water over a longer period of time. Anyway, that was £20, we fixed that. The head gasket, exhaust manifold gasket kit plus fitting was £180. So that was a pretty decent price there. What we think we concluded was the head studs that had been fitted weren't fitted with the larger washers under the nuts. So the head wasn't clamped as tightly as it maybe should have been. So that caused a failure of that gasket, and we've had no problem since doing a few track days after that. So £200 in total for those. We had the ignition switch, which got in the way of doing another track day. So I've done a video on that one, and that was just over £11 for that off of Amazon for a Febby part. So that was pretty decent. And the last failure was the radiator cooling fan. That had actually seized. I think it was the heat off the last track day that done that. And there was also a bit of an issue with the earth wiring on that. I think when it seized, it heated up that wire a little bit. And I think the wire was maybe a little bit undersized on that. So that's been rectified now. A new fan fitted and all good. So the fan itself is £43. So adding all that together, we've got £254 in total for what's broken. So what else have I had to pay for in the last 13 odd months? Okay, so there's a few things. They weren't things that I really had to buy, but I felt I wanted to just because of the intended uses of the car on the track. Right, so let's get started. There's videos for most of these on the channel as well. So bottom suspension arms, £97. Track rod ends, £36. This was an age thing. They look quite old. I didn't fancy going flat out around the track with what looked like the original bottom arms on it. Yep, so 97 and 36 for those. There was a front hub. One of the hub nuts was loose, so we replaced that. That was 119. A CV boot that was leaking, it was 12, and we got some wheel alignment once all that was done for £36. So it was £300 on the front suspension. Everything except the wheel alignment I done myself, so that isn't too bad. Brakes, I put some different pads on it, which were £201. They were more suited to the track. Some new discs at £112. Rear pads at a whopping £15. And I had a garage replace the metal front brake lines along with the full fluid change. That was £126. So we've got £454 roughly on brakes. Again, not too bad. I might not have went to those lengths with the exception of the brake pipes had the car not been used on track days. Next we have just some general stuff. We had engine oil and filter, so service items, spark plugs, and a T7 APC valve. I felt the old one was a little bit noisy. So the oil and filter was £43. T7 valve was £36 and the plugs were £12. So we've got another £91 there, so again nothing major.
and the MOT. So I've done a little bit of a video on this. This was dominated by welding, so I put in £50 nominal amount for welding to cover gas and metal. The reality is metal has flown up in price quite a bit, but I didn't use massive amounts of it. So 50 quid for the welding, which I've also done myself. You've seen the video for that one. A sports cat, which was 120 quid, and a set of used headlights for £20. So we've got another £190 there. So grand total for all those costs was just over £1,000, so 1,035, plus the stuff that had broken, which was 254 in total, which takes us to a tad under 1,300 for a year's worth of ownership. So put in the comments, what do you think about that? Excessive or not? Like I said, you've got 300 and 350 odd that are done in light of doing the track work just for safety reasons. So I don't think that's too bad for a car like this. What is good is that none of it is really related to the build of the car or the transplant of the engine into it. What did I like and what did I dislike about owning a B204 Astra? So what I did like was power delivery. So not the fastest thing in the world, but I think it's an incredibly good balance how the car's set up at the moment. 250, 260 brake, probably maybe a little bit more on torque, maybe about 280, I don't know, it's not been dynoed. It uses most of that power. Yeah, you get wheel spinning first like you would any car like that. Second in the dry, it would tend to produce power down. It's very usable. Having that original T25 in it, it spools really quick, so there's not really much lag to speak of. Yeah, it runs at a puff higher up the rev range, but that's not too big a problem. I think that's a pretty decent power value for a Mark IV coupe. So power delivery's been great, lots of fun. I think the sound, I'd say it sounds really good as well. You know, it is a 4-cylinder, it is a turbo, it's never going to sound like a V8. The exhaust isn't too loud, dump valve nice and loud, it takes us back to the 90s. So I very much enjoyed that, you know, flooring it, letting off the gas, that's been great fun. It's been a nice little combination. Handling wise for street usage, I think is spot on. Very flat, it's very predictable. You get your usual understeer as you would with any car like that. I've never managed to oversteer it, like, even on the track or anything like that. So it's very, very predictable, very steady for the roads. Brakes are obviously awesome with the Mark V VXR upgrade on it, so they're very predictable. Handling's very predictable on it. Grip, you could probably do with better tyres, I would say. I think to sum it up, you know, when you go out in it, you're driving something reasonably unique and something just a bit more special with a good bit of character about it. Moving on to things I dislike, there's not actually that many. I guess technically you could probably do with a bit more power. You notice it top end of third, I'll say on the track, it could do with a little bit more boost till the red line. The T25 just runs out of puff. So maybe a little bit more power. I mean, if I was going to keep it another year, I'd maybe stick a TD04 of some variety, maybe a 19T on it. So is that a piece, but it's not the end of the world. It's very low ride height. So around town, if there's tons of speed humps and stuff, it can drag off them, so you have to go pretty slowly over them. So that's not ideal, a little bit irritating, just in a town environment. And the 6-paddle clutch is quite aggressive. But again, that's just the consequence of having something that will handle more power, you know, where you need it.
Okay, so let's do a little walk round, see what condition the car's now in. We've luckily had no accidents on the track since I've had it, touch wood anyway, but it's in decent condition, it's not mint. There are scratches all over it, like tiny little hairline scratches, nothing major, but rust-wise, it's actually reasonably rust-free when you look at it. A good few scratches on that driver's door. But even looking around the arches are in pretty decent condition for what it is, considering I haven't really put any time or effort into the bodywork. It would really benefit from a decent machine polish, I would say. Boot, yeah, the boot has got a little bit of a ding in it there, just above the Vauxhall badge. You might be able to see that or might not be able to see that. and the spoiler, a few wee scuffs and things on that. The passenger side, pretty much the same. I would say pretty decent condition. Good few wee scratches on that bumper there. The rear quarter, again, good few wee scratches, but rust-wise, it is reasonably rust-free. A couple of tiny little dings here and there, and stone chips. Wee scratch there in the middle of the door. But it is pretty presentable. And with the machine polish, I did do a detailing video on it when I first got it, and that made a huge difference to it. Probably won't be able to see from the sunlight. There's a good few chips in that bonnet. I'll zoom in, you might see a few of them that have been touched in the past. So that's not perfect. But what I'd say overall is it's a very, very presentable car.